kill the guy, and like it's just sad. Like I don't understand what happened. Like it's hard to explain what happened. Bad for us too. You know what I mean? And like anybody could do that. Like I can go in the ring in WWE and do that. To, like why I do that?
Videos. I watched the full live stream and all that. I got nothing. I got nothing.
Oh,
I can't. You can't defend this. I can. There's no defense with this.
Boxing fans and fight enthusiasts, welcome back to BoxyHub, where we break down the most shocking, controversial, and jaw-dropping stories in the fight world. Today we are diving into something that has shaken not just fans but fighters, trainers, and streamers alike. We are talking about Dylan Dennis, Rampage Jackson, XQC, and the incident that has left everyone saying the same thing: no one can defend what has happened.
What happened was when I first came in there, my goal was to not tackle him onto Stu.
Doug the Epic Malo described his actions when the chaos unfolded, and his explanation reveals just how tense and dangerous the situation really was. He explained that his first instinct was not to tackle anyone onto Stu, which shows he was aware of the collateral damage that could occur in a chaotic scuffle. Instead, Doug assessed the environment and made a decision to pull the aggressor away from Stu, showing a level of quick thinking and responsibility. This moment highlights that even in an uncontrolled brawl there are still individuals trying to minimize harm. Doug's decision to move to the outside, get under an armpit, and try to throw the aggressor off to the side was tactical. It reveals that he was not just reacting emotionally but thinking logically under pressure.
Went in, I looked, I assessed, and I said, I have to pull him away from Stu.
This paints the picture of someone trying to contain the situation, not escalate it. What makes this particularly important is the fact that Doug was trying to prevent further injury to Stu, who was already in a vulnerable position. His words serve as a reminder that when things break down in such an environment, there are always those who step up to try and prevent the worst. However, the fact that Doug even had to make this choice underscores how dangerous the actions of the aggressor were. No matter how much Doug tried to control the situation, the truth is clear: the original act that triggered this chaos is indefensible. It forced people around to act as human shields, putting themselves at risk, and when we look back at it, we can already see the core of the problem. This was not a moment of competitiveness or sport. This was recklessness, and it put people like Doug in a position they should never have been in.
Hopefully one day I can meet Psycho Stu and shake his...
Doug continued by explaining how he deliberately shifted to the outside, slipped under an armpit, and tried to move the aggressor off to the side. This detail matters because it confirms that Doug's focus was not on escalating violence but on redirecting it. In combat sports or even in chaotic brawls, the decision to redirect energy rather than meet it head-on can often save lives. Doug's account also reflects the instinct of someone who understands physical confrontation and body leverage. He knew that if he tackled recklessly, more damage could have been done. At the same time, Rampage Jackson's comments about wanting to eventually meet Psycho Stu, shake his hand, and have a man-to-man conversation show another layer of complexity to the aftermath.
And have a man-to-man with him and stuff like that, but who knows?
Rampage reveals his personal character here. He expresses a desire to resolve things peacefully, to extend respect even after the violence, and to let the dust settle with some form of reconciliation. Rampage highlights his identity as someone who has mad love for everybody, which reflects his attempt to separate himself from the recklessness of what occurred. When you contrast Doug's immediate reaction to contain the damage with Rampage's reflective response, you see the two extremes: the instinctive physical containment in the heat of the moment, and the long-term emotional desire to mend relationships after the fact. But again, these actions only emphasize the point that this situation was never supposed to happen. Doug should not have been forced to neutralize chaos, and Rampage should not be left cleaning up emotional damage. The fact that both had to respond this way makes it clear: no one can defend the origin of this violence.
But y'all, the people that know me, y'all know I got mad love for everybody.
Rampage Jackson continued his reflection by saying he wanted a man-to-man with Psycho Stu, acknowledging the mess that had been created. His words demonstrate that Rampage values respect and personal accountability, and despite being one of the most intimidating fighters of his era, he emphasizes connection and reconciliation rather than lingering hostility. He wanted to have a conversation, a handshake, something that restores dignity after what had been lost. Rampage reminds everyone listening that those who truly know him understand he has nothing but love for people, which underscores his frustration at being associated with chaos that was not of his making. What is powerful about this is that Rampage is distancing himself from the indefensible act, not by denial, but by affirming his values and his character. He is saying, look, this is not me, this is not who I am, and those who know me can vouch for that. This makes his commentary incredibly important, because it highlights how damaging the event was to reputations beyond just the aggressor.
Kill the guy, and like it's just sad. Like I don't understand what happened. Like, it's hard to explain what happened.
Rampage's name, his legacy, his relationships are now entangled with a moment he did not create. He is forced into the role of peacemaker when his true identity should be celebrated as a legend of the fight game, not tied to scandal. The irony here is stark. Rampage, a man known for raw aggression inside the cage, is the one speaking about love, respect, and reconciliation, while others in this situation acted with pure recklessness. It turns the narrative upside down and again reinforces the main theme. No one can defend what happened, because even those associated with it are trying to distance themselves as far as possible from the act itself.
Bad for us too, you know what I mean? Like, and like anybody could do that. Like, I can go in the ring in WWE and do that to, like, why I do that?
Dylan Dennis offered perhaps one of the rawest reactions to the entire incident. He bluntly admitted that it looked like someone was trying to kill another person, and his words carried both sadness and confusion. Dennis was clear that he did not fully understand how or why it happened, and the fact that he found it difficult to even explain reveals the extremity of the act. When someone with the fight experience of Dylan Dennis struggles to rationalize what occurred, that is when you know it has crossed every possible line. He even pointed out how bad it looked for everyone involved, not just the individual committing the act. The optics, as Dennis described, were horrific. He compared it to something anybody could do if they jumped into a WWE ring, but in this case it was not scripted entertainment. It was real, uncontrolled violence, and that is why the comparison makes it look even worse. Wrestling fans know there is trust between performers to keep each other safe.
No, like, you're supposed to have a trust, and that's a different sport. It's a pro wrestling, you know?
Dennis highlights that here by showing the difference between staged aggression and actual recklessness. In doing so, he calls out the irresponsibility on display. This was not just a bad look for the individual, it damaged the reputation of the sport, the fighters, and anyone associated with it. Dennis puts into words what so many fans felt: confusion, sadness, and embarrassment for the community. And once again, it circles back to the theme. When seasoned fighters like Dennis cannot defend it, when they are left speechless and ashamed, that is when you know the act has no justification.
There's no words, bro. There's absolutely no fucking words. At all, bro. At all.
When he says moderation must be held accountable, he is talking about the people who have the power to stop things before they cross into dangerous territory. This isn't about silencing voices, it's about protecting participants and audiences from stunts that are reckless and harmful. Dylan is essentially saying that unless policy changes are made, incidents like this will only escalate. The fact that he is calling for immediate change shows how serious the violation was. If Dylan Dennis, a man known for trolling and stirring controversy, is demanding rules and accountability, then that means things have spiraled so far out of control that even chaos merchants are seeking order. His call for action is a warning. If platforms don't address these issues, they risk losing not only credibility but also the trust of fans and fighters who make their streams possible. Dylan's words are a rare moment of clarity in a space built on chaos, and it highlights just how deep this problem runs.
When I did that, you know, if you look at the video, you could see him shoot for a double leg on me.
Doug, also known as the Epic Malo, painted a chilling picture when he said, "And when I did that, you know, if you look at the video you could see him shoot for a double leg on me, so he could do the same thing to me that he did to Stu, or at least, you know, attempt to, cause I would have been awake." What Doug is describing is not just some minor scuffle, it's a clear reminder that these aren't harmless pranks, they carry real danger. The double leg takedown isn't some joke move. It's a legitimate fighting technique used to take someone off their feet, and in the wrong context, it can cause serious injury. What Doug is saying here is chilling because it highlights that what happened to Stu wasn't an accident or a one-off. It could have easily happened to him too. The fact that he emphasizes being awake makes the story even darker. If he had been alert, he would have been forced into a real fight situation, which could have escalated beyond control.
So he could do the same thing to me that he did to Stu. Or at least, you know, attempt to, because I would have been awake.
This is where Rampage Jackson's perspective ties in perfectly. Rampage has always been vocal about respecting fighting and separating it from reckless behavior. Doug's account shows how quickly things can go from content to chaos. When someone shoots a double leg in a non-fight environment, they're bringing real combat into a place where it doesn't belong. It isn't just unsafe, it's irresponsible. Doug's words are a warning to everyone watching. If this can happen to him, it can happen to anyone. It exposes the fact that these dangerous antics aren't isolated, they're becoming part of the culture, and that's what makes it terrifying. Doug's honesty reminds everyone that there is a difference between competition and recklessness. When you blur those lines, people get hurt and trust gets destroyed. His statement underscores the urgency of setting boundaries before someone ends up seriously injured or worse.
It's hard to watch, but in a way, it's like he might have something like wrong, like maybe like anger problems.
When Dylan Dennis looked at the incident and said that it was hard to watch because it almost looked like the guy had serious anger anger issues, he was tapping into something deeper than just a fighter's technical critique. Anyone who has been around combat sports knows there is a certain level of discipline and respect that comes with training. You do not just throw around another human being with reckless disregard, especially when that person is working or training in a controlled environment.
Because like, why would he do that, you know? And anybody that has trained or anybody has a brain knows when someone's working or someone's like...
Danis called it what it was. He suggested that maybe the individual had problems that went beyond fighting skills, problems tied to emotional instability or uncontrolled rage. And he is absolutely right. A fighter with proper training knows how to control his impulses. A fighter with real experience understands restraint is part of the game. So when you see someone act out with aggression that is unnecessary, what you are really witnessing is a lack of respect for the sport, for the opponent, and for human safety. Dillon Danis, no matter what people may say about him, has been in the gym long enough to spot when something looks off. And here, he was calling out behavior that crossed the line. His words resonate because they strike at the heart of what makes martial arts and combat sports different from street violence. It is not just about fighting. It is about understanding limits, about balance, about knowing when to unleash and when to hold back. To act the way this person did was not only reckless, it was dangerous and humiliating to the code of conduct every fighter is expected to live by. Dillon Danis made it clear, only someone with anger issues or complete ignorance would cross that line.
We're working, we're doing a WWE match. Like, you could slam me in my head. Like, I'm giving you my weight. You know what I mean? So, like, the guy obviously let him pick him up, and then slamming him like that is ridiculous, first off, especially being a guy that's trained. I know he's only one.
When Dillon Danis followed up by saying that the opponent clearly allowed the move, only to be slammed in that ridiculous fashion, he was highlighting just how disgraceful the act really was. In a training session or even a sparring match, there are unspoken agreements between fighters. There is trust. You give your partner something, you allow them to work, and in return, they respect that gift. That is how fighters improve. That is how gyms survive. That is how trust is built. But what Dillon Danis pointed out was betrayal. The fighter was allowed to pick him up, but instead of respecting that trust, he abused it, using it as an opportunity to make a statement that crossed every ethical line.
You wouldn't convince me.
That was not fighting. That was bullying in its purest form. And then you had streamer XQC weigh in, saying flat out that this was nothing less than attempted murder. That statement might sound over the top at first, but when you replay what happened, when you slow it down, you realize just how dangerous that slam was. The human body can only take so much impact. Neck, spine, and head injuries are not forgiving. One bad slam and a person's life can change forever. This was not just reckless, it was malicious. And that is exactly why people like Dillon Danis and XQC saw it as outrageous. They understood what it could have led to. This was not simply a training mishap. This was deliberate abuse of trust and a blatant disregard for human life. Dillon Danis and XQC were united in pointing out that no serious fighter would ever condone that kind of move in that context.
That is how you kill somebody. We've seen people die in street fights all the...
Streamer XQC went even further, hammering the point home with chilling clarity. He said that this is how people die. And he is right. We have all seen stories of fights in the streets or unregulated environments where one bad move, one dangerous slam, one unnecessary hit led to tragedy. People have lost their lives from far less. So when XQC reacted with outrage, it was not exaggerated. It was reality. He was not just talking about fighters. He was talking about human beings. The spine is fragile, the neck is vulnerable, and no amount of bravado or toughness can change biology. When someone decides to cross that line and execute a move with that kind of force, they are putting another life at risk. Period. And what makes this even worse is the fact that it was done in an environment where trust was supposed to exist. Dillon Danis, Rampage, and others who have fought at the highest level know exactly how much danger can come from a move like that.
Time with things that weren't even that bad. This is outrageous.
That is why XQC's words hit so hard. He was speaking for the casual viewer and for the fighters alike. It does not take a professional to know when something is outrageous. The slam was not just reckless, it was potentially lethal. And the refusal to stop, the refusal to recognize the line that had been crossed, made it even more sickening. XQC was right to call it what it was, because if people excuse this kind of behavior, it opens the door for even worse tragedies. Fighters train to master violence, but they also train to respect its consequences. When someone abuses that power, they stop being a fighter and start being a danger to everyone around them.
And I'll be transparent. I like Raja, and obviously I adore Rampage. Me and Rampage have a great relationship.
Brendan Schaub comes in with transparency, and right away he sets the tone by admitting that he likes Raja and absolutely adores Rampage. That's a very human start, because it shows he isn't out here trying to tear down people he personally knows or has built strong relationships with. But then comes the weight of the dilemma, because as soon as he heard about the incident and even spoke with Rampage directly, his first instinct wasn't outrage or condemnation, it was to figure out how he could defend Raja.
And it's just by nature, my initial thought was when I heard about this, and I spoke with Rampage.
That single admission says a lot about the power of loyalty and friendship in this fight community, but it also puts the entire situation under a magnifying glass. Because when even your closest allies, the ones who want to defend you at all costs, are struggling to find a way to do it, that should tell you how bad the optics truly are. Schaub wasn't just approaching this as a casual observer, he was actively looking for a reason, an excuse, any angle to protect Raja's reputation. But here's the issue: when the evidence is overwhelming, when the act is violent to a level that shocks trained fighters and outside observers alike, loyalty can only go so far.
About this, I went, all right, how can I defend Raja?
Schaub's mindset in that moment reveals the difficulty of separating personal bias from reality, and it underscores just how indefensible this entire act really was. Because if Rampage's friend is left scrambling, desperately searching for a way to justify it, you know that the truth is ugly enough to silence even the loudest defender.
Videos, I watched the full live stream and all that. I got nothing.
That struggle Brendan Schaub hinted at reaches its breaking point when he flat out admits that after watching the full videos, the full live stream, he came up with nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that is one of the most damning statements in this entire controversy. Schaub has always been someone willing to give fighters the benefit of the doubt, to try and contextualize moments of rage or lapses in judgment. But here he looked at every angle, sat through the footage, and still had to throw up his hands in defeat.
I got nothing.
No,
I can't, you can't defend this. I can, there's no defense with this.
I got nothing, Schaub said, and that statement carries a weight far heavier than any angry critique. Because when even the people in your corner, the people predisposed to defend you, say there is no defense, that means the action was beyond the pale. Schaub's repetition of, I can't defend this, hammers home the helplessness of the situation. It's not just that it was wrong, it's that it was so blatantly wrong that words fail those closest to you. And that's where the narrative crystallizes. Raja's slam wasn't a heated moment of competition gone wrong. It wasn't a misunderstanding, and it wasn't something that could be spun into a mistake. It was an outright act of recklessness that no one with credibility could justify. In a community that thrives on loyalty and defense of its own, when the defense collapses, you know the act has crossed every imaginable line. And that's where this entire story leaves us, with fighters, streamers, and fans all looking at the same footage and shaking their heads in disbelief. Dylan Dennis framed it as a problem with control, questioning what kind of person does something so reckless when both men knew it wasn't a real fight. Rampage, usually the loudest voice of chaos, had to face his friend's actions being discussed across the fight world. And XQC, from the outside looking in, stripped away all the excuses and called it for what it looked like, something dangerously close to attempted murder. Brendan Schaub, torn between loyalty and reality, tried to find a way to stand up for his people but ultimately admitted he couldn't. And that is the defining moment, when even your allies stop defending you. The truth speaks for itself. What Raja did wasn't just unnecessary, it was reckless, dangerous, and indefensible. In combat sports, we respect violence when it is bound by the rules of competition, but when it spills into something that endangers lives without reason, the community has no choice but to call it out. This wasn't a highlight. This wasn't a show of strength. This was a line being crossed, and the fact that no one credible can defend it seals the story. Raja's slam will go down not as a moment of dominance, but as a cautionary tale of how quickly reckless actions can erase respect, loyalty, and credibility in the fight game.